10 inventors you didn't know who created things we use today. We take developments that were made years prior for permission. However, we frequently disregard individuals who formulated them. When you read about the manners by which these individuals made their extraordinary creations, you'll appreciate considerably more what they needed to go through to make it. There is such a lot of we can gain from these creators, from their assurance to their genius and penances. They did some amazing things simultaneously. In these advanced occasions, we now and then need to remind ourselves how far we've come. Highlighted picture credit: Samuel Laurence. 10 Christopher Cockerel. The Hovercraft. Photograph credit: hovercraft.org/. Christopher Cockerel got inspired by the thought for the air cushion vehicle after researchers found a fundamental model could drift with a pad of air inside it. The issue was that the air immediately got away through the sides. Cockerel showed that a divider of air could tackle this issue by catching all the air. He directed a trial where he fitted a feline food tin inside an espresso tin and afterwards siphoned air from a vacuum cleaner between them. 1. In 1955, he licensed his thought. After 4 years, his air cushion vehicle test was effective after it went along the south coast of England. His creation is particularly helpful in nations where there are worn streets and railroad tracks. This allows individuals to go through various scenes like streams and deserts. 153.8K. Nike pledges $40 million to support black communities. 9 Frank Whittle. The jet engine. Photograph credit: Descarati.com. While learning at the Royal Air Force College, Frank Whittle composed a paper on future developments in aircraft design. He really expounded on how planes would before long have the option to go at paces of in excess of 800 kilometers each hour, 500 miles per hour. They would be furnished with stream motors rather than propellers. Shave portrayed how his motor plan would copy modest fuel oil, consequently creating gases that would turn the turbine edges and cause the plane to go ahead from the sheer power of the gases. Unfortunately, the Air Ministry wasn't keen on his thought. In 1936, he chose to begin an organization called Power Jets Limited while learning at Cambridge University. He documented a patent for his turbojet motor thought just as the turbofan. The motor was at first tried on the ground on April 12, 1937. After 4 years in May 1941, it was introduced in the Gloucester E-28 39th plane and flown interestingly with no problems. 2. Shave showed that his stream motor plan was substantially more proficient than the motors of the time. Right up till today, his stream motor is utilized to control most planes. 8 Peter Durand. Metal can. Photograph credit: BBC. Peter Durand got the main patent for the metal can. Be that as it may, Nicolas Appert from France was the primary individual to protect food by pressing it in glass containers. He would then prepare the nourishment for a couple of hours until it was cleaned. Durand applied a similar strategy with his metal can. He put food in a compartment and fixed it. Then, he set the holder in chilly water and continuously heated it to the point of boiling. At last, he opened the cover somewhat and afterward fixed it once more. He initially got the idea from Philippe de Girard, additionally from France. Girard imparted his plan to Durand and utilized him as a specialist to help patent it. In any case, Durand's name was just a single obvious on the patent, which was allowed by King George III in 1810. 3. 7 Charles Babbage. The computer. Photograph credit: computerhistory.org. During his time examining math at Cambridge University, Charles Babbage was chipping away at a table that could ascertain logarithms so he could do numerical calculations precisely. You could say that this put him on the way to needing to fabricate his own ascertaining machine. During the 1820s, this was named the distinction engine. A working model was worked to show crowds how it functioned. He additionally had plans to fabricate the distinction engine too. He was resolved to the point that he even convinced the British government to put £17,000 in the venture, which was a ton of cash back then. He additionally contributed £6,000 of his own money. 4. All things considered, the task was rarely finished. Babbage was relatively radical. He would have needed to hang tight a lot more years for the correct sort of machine to be worked to play out those figurines. In spite of this, Babbage is typically viewed as the granddad of the cutting-edge PC. 6. Heinrich Hertz. Radar. Heinrich Hertz was a German physicist who demonstrated that electromagnetism was genuine, which upheld James Clerk Maxwell's hypothesis from 1865. Hertz led tests in his research facility while showing material science at Karlsruhe Polytechnic somewhere in the range of 1885 and 1889. He would make electromagnetic waves in his research facility and measure their length and speed. He showed that electromagnetic waves were equivalent to light and warmth waves. They carried on along these lines through vibration and reflection. In 1888, Hertz set up a test in which he utilized an electrical circuit to make a sparkle jump across a hole a few metal poles. This delivered electric heartbeats in another circuit from a further distance. This drove him to turn into the primary individual to send and get radio waves. 5. Tragically, Hertz passed on at age 36. Preceding Guglielmo Marconi showed how radio waves could send messages over significant distances. 5. John Logie Baird. TV. Photograph credit. H. Winfield Secker. John Logie Baird began as an architect. In any case, his positions made him so hopeless that he turned into a designer, all things considered. His first thoughts fizzled and made him poor at age 35. At that point, in 1923, he started to deal with a machine that could communicate pictures. It would likewise have the option to communicate sound by means of radio. He tried it by sending some rough pictures by remote transmitter to a recipient a couple of feet from him. Baird broadcast illustrated pictures in 1924 and showed human faces you could perceive in 1925. He at that point gave a public exhibit of broadcast moving articles at the Royal Institution in London in 1926. The German mailing station gave him the assets to make a TV administration in 1929. Be that as it may, when the British Broadcasting Corporation, otherwise known as the BBC TV administration, started in 1936, Baird's TV was in direct rivalry with Marconi's Electric and Musical Industries machine. The BBC picked Marconi's broadcast framework rather than Baird's in 1937. 6. All things considered, if not for Baird's underlying innovation, we wouldn't sit in front of the TV today. 4. Guglielmo Marconi. Radio. Guglielmo Marconi was an Italian innovator who continued in the strides of Heinrich Hertz and James Clerk Maxwell in the wake of finding out about their tests. Marconi began his tests in 1894 on his dad's bequest close to Bologna. In 1895, he figured out how to impart radio signs from up to 1.6 kilometers, 1 mile, away. He utilized basic gear, including an enlistment loop, a Morse key, and a coherer to distinguish radio waves. Yet, his tests didn't start a lot of consolation from the Italian government. So he chose to go to England in 1896. There, he was acquainted with Sir William Preece, who was the main designer for the mail center. Notwithstanding, this was said to just be coming clean with half, as Marconi initially set out to move toward the Secretary of State for War. Marconi had sent a letter to them about his arrangement for radio-controlled torpedoes as opposed to utilizing radio waves to impart. His advancement came 5 years after the fact in 1901. He got radio signals in St. John's, Newfoundland, that had been sent across the Atlantic Ocean from Poldhu in Cornwall, England. This assisted with beginning the improvement of radio telecom benefits that we actually use today. 7. 3. Trevor Bayliss. End-up radio. Trevor Bayliss was an English innovator. He began building up a model for the breeze-up radio subsequent to watching a TV program in 1991 about the spread of AIDS in Africa. He thought, on the off chance that there are wrap-up turntables, for what reason can't there be wrap-up radios? He utilized an accuracy engine, which was run on a looped-up spring. The precision engine got its name as wound-up springs were utilized in clocks. His model ran for around 14 minutes. After that achievement, he was welcomed on the TV program Tomorrow's World in 1994. At that point, in 1995, Baygen Power Industries was set up in Cape Town, South Africa. They utilized crippled laborers to develop wind radios. 8. In 1997, another plan was created to engage the Western market. It was lighter and more convenient. The new plan just required 20 seconds of twisting to work as long as 60 minutes. This radio likewise incorporated a sun-powered board so it could run without anyone else utilizing daylight. Bayliss won numerous honors for his development and aided numerous individuals all the while. 2. Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz. Math. Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz was frequently credited with creating differential and essential math. Be that as it may, different mathematicians, like Isaac Newton, have likewise assumed acknowledgement for the improvement of analytics. For Leibniz's situation, he subsidized his examinations by building an ascertaining machine. He showed this gadget to the Royal Society during his excursion to London in 1673. By 1675, he had set up the standards of differential and basic analytics. In present-day times, analytics has made it conceivable to follow the situation of an article, for example, a space transport. Likewise, it can assist with foreseeing if a dam may blast if there is an excessive pressing factor from the water ascending excessively high. PCs have made it far simpler to tackle math issues than the manual cycles utilized in the 17th century. Math is likewise the principal section point for any individual who needs to consider science. 1. Thomas Newcomen. First practical steam engine. Thomas Newcomen was a specialist and innovator who fabricated the principal steam motor from James Watt's unique motor plan. Newcomen began as an ironmonger in Dartmouth and was worried about the expense of utilizing ponies to siphon water out of tin mines. For over 10 years, he and his colleague, John Calley, explored different avenues regarding a steam siphon. It turned out to be more remarkable than a past siphon worked by Thomas Savery, whose motor plan couldn't tackle the issue of siphoning water without separating. Newcomen's siphon worked when the constraint made the cylinder be pushed down. The buildup from the steam made a vacuum inside the chamber of the siphon. The valves would shift back and forth among opening and shutting, permitting steam and water to go through and work on a non-stop cycle. This motor tackled the issue of siphoning water without separating. Thus, a lot greater amount of Newcomen's motors were worked after James Watt's motor was invented. 10.